Yesterday, there was a .NET release with a new Sharp 12 version. In this short video, I wanted to share with you 4 new features that are, in my opinion, the most useful ones, which are collection expressions, primary constructors, alias types, and also default Lambda parameters. Besides those 4 new features, there are also ref-read-only parameters, inline arrays, experimental attribute, and interceptors. But I will not mention them in this video. If you are interested, I would recommend you to actually check out this Microsoft blog. The link is in the description below. Alright, so let's go to Visual Studio and talk about the first feature, which are aliases. Aliases actually already existed in Sharp language. For example, whenever we were using the int type, it was nothing else but an alias for the system.int32 type. But now we are also able to define our own aliases. So for example, let's say that I want to be using the point type, which could be equal to, let's say, a tuple of 2 values, which would be x and y. So right now, having this using statement, I can say that, for example, I can define a new point like this, and using the new keyword with point alias, I can construct a new tuple with values, let's say, 2 and 6 like this. And as this is tuple, I could also use the deconstruction to get the x position and the y position from our point, which is also possible. Besides that, I can also use the point alias as a type parameter. For example, in this simple getQuadrant method that is taking the point as a parameter. So right here, the point is nothing else but a tuple with x and y values. But besides tuples, I think that aliases will also be very useful whenever we are dealing with a long definition of a generic type. So maybe let's say that we'll have some class definition, let's call it assets like this. And within this class, I'll create a new property of type of dictionary for a string. And the second type will be, let's say, IEnumerable for also string type. And let's call it country cities like this. So as you can tell, this definition is getting pretty long, but you can also imagine more complex generic types and having to deal with this long definition every time, for example, whenever passing a parameter, well, it's causing some troubles. So right now, what I can do is I can say that, okay, so this type, I wanted to call it actually, let's call it country cities like this. And by the using statement, I will define an alias, but right now I'm getting a compilation error because whenever we are defining aliases for our non-primary types, we'll have to specify the full namespace. So in this case, this will be just system collection generics.dictionary and also system collection generic.IEnumerable. So in this way, I'm actually able to create a new alias for this type. And now in the assets class, I can specify that I have a type country cities, which is nothing else but a dictionary for a string of a IEnumerable string types. And by default, the aliases are available in the scope of the single file. So let's say that I wanted to actually move the assets class to a new file. And even though I'm using the same alias, it is not reachable as it's not defined in this file. So I could, of course, define it right here. But also what I could do with is, let's say, define it in the program.cs file, but with the global keyword. So now, as this is a global using, I would have to put it on the very top of this file. And with this definition, if I go back to the assets file, as you can see, now the country cities is a valid alias that is defined in the program.cs file. And if you are wondering whether you can use the generic types for aliases like this, well, the answer is no. For now, we are not able to use generic types for aliases. So in this way, using aliases, we are able to define this complex generic type to just country cities type. Moving on to the next feature, which is actually being hinted by the IDE, which is the collection expression, is a new definition of initializing collections. So as this country cities is a dictionary, and dictionary is a collection, now we are able to actually define it like this. So open square brackets and close square brackets. Maybe let's go ahead and switch to the second program. And first of all, I wanted to show you how can we define a new array, new collections, or new list. So up until now, whenever we wanted to define a new array of int values, we could do it like this, or just remove the new int array keyword and replace it with this collection initialization. But right now, we can replace the brackets into the square brackets like this, and this is also a valid definition of a new array for int type. And to create an empty array of ints, I can just use open and close square brackets. By the way, if you know JavaScript, this syntax will be very familiar to you. And let's say that, for example, I have a write byte array method that is accepting a byte array as a parameter. And previously, we had to define the parameter like this. But right now, we can use the new collection expressions to actually say that I have just 3 values, 1, 2, 3, and the compiler will know that this is now actually a byte array. Also, whenever dealing with lists, previously we had to create a new object with a new keyword But right now, you can just simplify this by using the open and square brackets and put all of the elements that we want to actually be initialized within this new list. Collection expressions can also be used with the span type. So let's say that I have a span of the datetime type, and to create a new span, I can just use collection expression and initialize those two values, which are of course datetimes. Besides collection expressions, we now also have a new definition of a spread operator. So for example, let's say that we had two separate arrays, and if you wanted to actually combine every element for numbers1 and numbers2, we had to use the concat method. And if I wanted to actually add some additional values, also again, I had to use the concat method. To bundle it up together to the int array, we had to also use the toArray method invocation at the end of this chain of the concat methods. But right now, instead of this, I can just use the spread operator, which is the dot syntax. And after the dots, I will just put the collection of numbers1. Then with a comma, I can say that, okay, I want to have a separate value. Or I can just say that I also want to use the spread operator for numbers2 collection. And with this definition, the number2 arrays will contain elements of 1, 2, 3, which are coming from the numbers1 array, then 4, 5, 6, which are coming from numbers2, and then the rest will be just 7, 8, 9, resulting in the simple collection constructed by the collection expressions using spread operator. And by the way, the same syntax will also apply to, let's say, a list for the type of int like this. Moving next, we have default lambda parameters, and this is a pretty simple feature because right now we are able to define default parameters for anonymous functions. So up until this moment, this assignment to the default value of 1 was not possible, but right now we can define any default parameters for any anonymous function, which can be used in a lambda expression. So with this definition, I could invoke the increment by method with just one parameter, and the second parameter will be equal to 1 as this is a default value for this parameter. But if needed to, I could also specify that the second parameter has to be equal to, and in this situation, the default value would be overridden. Moving on to the last feature, which are primary constructors, let's first of all see a very similar feature, which was already working for records. So let's say that we have defined some record, let's call it person, and if we did it like this, so let's say first name and string last name, this would mean that we have creating actually a constructor with two parameters, and those two parameters will be actually used to set up a public properties of first name and last name. So having this record defined, I could say that, okay, I want to create a new person with a new keyword. So let's say new person. Let's call him Jakub Kozera like this. And for example, I could use the person dot last name property to actually console write line. So this record definition created a constructor for the person type, but right now we are able to actually use the same syntax for any type definition. So let's say that person is now just class. And as you can see, the syntax is a valid syntax. And right now those two parameters are now parameters in the scope of the whole person class. So maybe let's rename them to use camel case instead. And for example, they could be used to actually initialize some public properties. So maybe let's define a string last name property. And instead of having this setter as a public one, I will just do the initialization with the parameter of last name. Let's also initialize the first name from the primary constructor parameter. And as you can see, this now is a valid definition of a class person with a constructor that is accepting two parameters of first name and last name. And those two parameters are accessible across the whole person class definition. So not only I can use them to assign some properties. For example, let's say that I will have a public void say hi method. And now I could use those two parameters in the console write line. So let's say, hi, I am first name from the parameter and last name like this. But what is also important with the primary constructor parameters is that you could override them in any way, in any place in this class type definition. So as you can see, I was able to override the first name argument to this value of test. And right now this test value will be used instead of the initial value of first name parameter. Also, what you have to keep in mind with these primary constructors is that whenever you're actually trying to define your own constructor, you'll have to chain down to the invocation of this primary constructor. So right now I'm getting a compilation error because I have to invoke this keyword and specify the two parameters of my primary constructor. So let's say that I actually wanted to create an empty person. So I'll just pass two empty strings to this primary constructor. Another useful usage for the primary constructors would be the DI dependency injection scenario. So let's say that I have some public interface and I have some example control class that is usually defined like this. So I have a public constructor, I'm injecting iService, and then assigning this iService to some private read-only variable, which then can be used, for example, to retrieve some data in endpoint for this control class. But right now, we can actually simplify the syntax. So instead of having to define this constructor explicitly, as well as the private field, I can just make use of the primary constructor. And in the get method, I will be able to actually use the service parameter, and the behavior of this class will be the same. So as you can tell, we have saved a couple of code lines, which is always very good. So these were the 4 top new features in Sharp 12. Let me know in the comment section which one is your favorite one.